Silicon Avatar. Due to popular demand and their sparkling personality, a multifaceted character returns.
We start out with Riker flirting with a girl named Carmen on a green planet. He asks her to dinner, and she makes some very suggestive suggestions.
It was a very hot conversation.
I provide the most memorable desserts. But I've been saving up my ration of dry chicken curry.
Is she talking about food or something else? Either way, Riker's in.
Suddenly, they hear a loud sound and see the giant crystal entity from Data lore appear in the sky.
Carmen asks Riker what it is, as if he should automatically know for some reason.
They don't seem particularly worried in that moment, and Riker watches his dinner disappear right in front of his eyes.
Carmen!
But I've been saving up my ration of dry chicken curry.
The others seal themselves off in a cave, shielded by refractory metals that also block communication with the Enterprise.
But they don't wait to try to communicate with the ship until they're already underground. I get that they were in a rush, but it seemed like there was time to do that before they went underground.
Especially if they know from previous experience how dangerous this entity is. And after only an hour in this large cave, they are concerned that they will run out of air, but luckily Worf comes to rescue them.
And when they go back above ground, they find the whole planet has turned into a cool matte painting.
Dr. Marr, an expert on the crystal entity, beams aboard the Enterprise to help them study it.
The only thing I recognized her from was some really crappy 90s made-for-TV sci-fi movie with Rutger Hauer. She says the entity absorbs all life energy to keep going, and that reminded me of Galactus.
But not as cool.
And she's curious why there were survivors this time when there have never been any survivors before.
And she's really overexcited about the chance to talk to them, until her giddiness is dampened by having to talk to Data.
She knows that Lore assisted the entity in destroying the Omicron Theta colony before, and she suspects Data of collaborating with it this time.
I thought a better reason to be suspicious of Data was the fact that he's malfunctioned or been controlled by others so many times already, and that Lore even switched places with him before.
She reveals that her son died on Omicron Theta, and her life's work is to stop the crystal entity.
She acts like a huge bitch to Data till he brings up her attitude directly.
And then she seems angry that she can't make him angry.
But he's a robot. I guess she didn't pick up on that before.
She hasn't found anything different from this attack, and Data suggests doing a different kind of scan, to which Marr expresses annoyance. But if she's doing everything she can to find out anything she can, why wouldn't she perform all different kinds of scans?
What Data suggests works, and even provides them a way to track it, even though the way they talk about it doesn't actually make scientific sense. Dr. Marr tells Picard that she has an idea for how to destroy the entity, but he pulls her aside and says he'd rather try to communicate with it and only kill it as a last resort because it is a living being.
And it might just be feeding and not inherently malicious.
And he tells her to work with Data to figure out a method of communication.
So she goes to talk to him, and he's in his room, practicing pretending to play the guitar over pre-recorded music.
In a scene that goes on way too long.
He reveals that since he was on Omicron Theta, he has the contents of the colonists' logs, journals, and some of their memories. So Marr asks him to recall journal entries of her son.
He tells her son was proud of her accomplishments, but before they can go any farther, they are called to the bridge.
They're receiving a distress call from a ship that has encountered the entity, but they can't get there in time, and it's wiped out.
When they go to investigate what's left of it, it looks fine from the outside, which I was surprised by. Riker interrupts Picard in his ready room and makes him take his leg off his desk, just to tell him that nothing has changed, which he could easily have done so via the communicators. But then Picard asks Riker if he'd like to write a letter to Carmen's parents. Remember her? The character that seemed important at the beginning of the episode but hasn't even been mentioned since then?
Riker confides to Picard that maybe destroying the entity is the right move. If they can prevent more deaths, they should. And Picard suggests he's being influenced by personal feelings, meaning he knows how much Riker really wanted that chicken curry.
Dr. Marr and Data work on their communication ideas, and she asks him some more about her son.
And then she asks him to talk to her in her son's voice, which was a little creepy.
She suggests he read from one of his journal entries, which conveniently were written as letters to family and friends.
and Data really captures his tone, more so than I think would be possible in written form.
I took my last exam today. I think I did all right on everything except cellular biology.
They catch up to the entity and begin attempting communication by emitting gravitons in a constant pattern. And when there's no immediate reaction, they start changing the pattern. Give it a chance to freaking react.
And eventually they manage to get a series of responses showing communication could be possible. But then Dr. Marr turns the gravitons up to 11.
And the entity stops responding. And they all tell Dr. Marr to stop sending the signal, but she doesn't. And the characters all just stand around.
Until the whole thing just explodes. And later she attempts to somehow relay her feelings to Data to somehow reach her son, which was dumb. And he responds by totally shattering her emotionally, which was very satisfying.
I do not believe he would be happy. He was proud of your career as a scientist. And now you have destroyed that. I believe your son would be very sad now.
And then the episode is over, just like that. Silicon Avatar. Overall,
this was a very basic, simple story based on ideas we've seen before, like someone warming up to Data after initially distrusting him. Dr. Marr was a standard, over-the-top character of her type, very irritating and devoid of even a semblance of a real character. And her arc was predictable and lame. We didn't learn anything at all about the crystal entity, so there really wasn't anything interesting on that side of the story. And we started out focusing on Riker and Carmen, which didn't end up mattering at all. The only thing I liked about this episode was the ending with Data and Dr. Marr, which went exactly the way I hoped, but I didn't actually think it would. I thought she would end up agreeing to let the creature live, which would have made this an even lamer episode, so at least that didn't happen. But this episode really has nothing noteworthy to offer, other than bringing up the fact that Data has multiple people's memories, which I, and apparently the writers, had completely forgotten about up until now. I gave it a D+.
I also gave it a D+. I thought it was ridiculous that in the entire galaxy and how much they travel around in it, they run into the exact same thing as before by chance. It wasn't actively following them, wasn't tracking their movements, it was just there. Dr. Marr was all over the place, and her getting more and more unstable as the episode went on was a little much. I get she was racked with guilt, but she was barely holding it together. Did she display that in every encounter of the entity she studied? Because that would weird people out really quickly. And it was weird that she kept asking Data to recall her son's journal entries instead of just saying, hey, can you move all those files to this flash drive so I can read them myself?
Yeah, but she couldn't read them in her son's voice.
Then she could have gone a step further and said, hey, can you put these into the holodeck so I can have a projection of my son? Instead of fawning over a robot? And never at any point does any member of the crew consider that maybe there's more than one of these things, because it's the same one as before, so it must be the only one. There were other directions this episode could have gone in, and I wish they had gone in any of them, but instead we got stuck with this. Now excuse me, I have to go vibrate and shatter into a billion pieces because I'm so irritated.